Hello, I'm Tim Willoughby here with R&D member Ian Duke. Reed not in the feature match later this round, but we're going to go straight to the feature match area because we're ready now for round 12 of Pro Tour Fate Reforged. Hello and welcome to round 12 of Pro Tour Fate Reforged. I'm Tim Willoughby here with Ian Duke, and we've got a great set of feature matches for you. Seth Manfield's still undefeated. He's up against Jelga Vigejmar on the King of the Hill table. Yuki Ichikawa against Jason Chung from New Zealand. Robin Dolo's up against Sam Black, but we're going to be starting with Jon Finkel playing Infect on the left of our screen, and he's up against Willy Edel. Two great players, and two players playing kind of iconic decks for them. We know that Jon Finkel likes playing non-interactive, powerful, fast decks. We know that Willy Edel loves his mid-range. There we see Jon just looking at his opening hand. This could be a great match.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the classic combo deck versus mid-range deck. You know, both players playing strategies that they're really comfortable with. Willy Edel, of course, known for his love of Jund in previous iterations of the format. Updating that to Abzan now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you're looking for a player to learn something from about how to play and how to build your Abzan deck, Willy Edel probably the person that I'd be looking to. I mean, he must have been happy with the set of changes to the ban list for Modern.
Absolutely. So Jon Finkel starting off here with a fetch land for a Noble Hierarch. One of the best starts the Infect deck can have: mana acceleration and, of course, that Noble Hierarch adding power to your Infect creatures.
And we see in Finkel's hand there, he's got Inkmoth Nexus and Blighted Agent. He needs to get an Infect creature to win, but he pretty much only needs one because he's got a lot of pump spells to potentially get in for a huge amount of Infect damage very, very quickly. And with the Gitaxian Probe, you've got one of the best players that's ever picked up a Magic card with perfect information about what's going on.
Yeah, you got to be scared when Jon Finkel knows what tricks you have up your sleeve.
And he sees here Liliana the Veil and Path to Exile. Liliana, kind of one of the hallmark cards of the Abzan deck, able to cause discard and get rid of creatures in play. That Path to Exile also going to be a little bit problematic for Finkel here.
Yeah, now Liliana is a particularly important card in this matchup because the Infect deck relies so heavily on combinations of cards. Liliana can really attack the Infect player's card quantity, reducing their hand size and making them unable to combine their cards to effective synergy.
And we see here Jon just sort of casually building up his board. He's got to just make sure he gets the threats in play there. And Blighted Agent, 1/1, Infect, can't be blocked. He's got his path to victory. He just needs to make sure that he can actually ride it the whole way now.
Yeah, often the Abzan deck wants to kind of gum up the ground with mid-sized creatures, things like Tarmogoyf and Siege Rhino, and Blighted Agent is just the perfect foil to that. It's basically got to draw a removal spell or else the Abzan player is going to have a really hard time dealing with it.
Yeah, I mean, Lingering Souls is one of the big cards out of the Abzan deck that can pose a real problem for Infect. It can create a huge amount of blockers that it has to kind of gradually work its way through. I know that this deck, between the main deck and the sideboard, is also running Distortion Strike as a way of trying to go one-up on the decks that are just planning on making an awful lot of blockers.
Yeah, and Apostle's Blessing as well, another way to sneak some creatures through.
So here's a Thoughtseize from Edel. He says, if you're going to have perfect information, I want perfect information too. And let's have a little look at exactly what he sees from Jon Finkel's hand. There's that Distortion Strike, but quite a lot of lands for him there, really.
Yeah, he's a little bit low on gas here. I mean, he does have the Noble Hierarch to sort of increase his clock each turn. I think what Jon wants to do with this hand is just peck away for a few turns, get Willy Edel into a range where he starts feeling uncomfortable and could lose at any moment to a pump spell. And what that'll do is pressure Willy's mana, where now he feels obligated to leave mana up each turn to potentially respond with a removal spell, and it makes it hard for Willy Edel to develop his own board.
And I guess that Willy knows that that Path to Exile in his hand here, it's not really going to... There are some occasions where you're a bit wary about playing it because you don't want to give your opponent a land. Finkel's got loads of lands. I mean, this is not a deck that needs very many lands anyway.
And not much to do with them either. I mean, you know, he could string together a couple pump spells, but as we've seen, he doesn't really have that much to string together right now.
I mean, the fact that he drew that Apostle's Blessing right after Thoughtseize is going to be great for Finkel, though, right?
Yeah, a great card to have as your one hidden card in your hand, so to speak. Could really set Willy Edel up for disaster if he relies on resolving that Path to Exile.
We see the 2P there underneath 15 life for Willy Edel. Thanks to the Exalted Trigger, that Blighted Agent getting him for 2 points of poison. If you ever get 10 poison, you are out of the game. That's a game win for Jon Finkel. So he's, what, 20% of the way there?
Yes. But of course, this Infect deck can be extremely explosive. So Willy has to be careful, even just getting a few poison counters early in the game, because that means suddenly if he taps out for something like a Liliana or something like a Siege Rhino, all of a sudden he could just be destroyed by pump spells.
So a post-combat path to exile there. Presumably, I guess he wants to make sure that he's getting threats off the board where he can, right? I mean, there is still that Inkmoth Nexus, so it's not as if Jon Finkel doesn't have sources of Infect around.
So Willy wisely playing the Path to Exile post-combat to avoid potential blowout from something like a protection spell plus a pump spell.
And I guess that Vines of Vast would have been horrible.
Yeah,
him,
absolutely.
Right?
He saw that Jon has that in his deck earlier with the Thoughtseize. He did take it, of course, but is aware that Jon could draw more spells in that vein. That gives him the opportunity to safely resolve a Liliana of the Veil, which, as we mentioned before, a really potent card in this matchup.
The Liliana there, -2 to force sacrifice of a creature from Jon Finkel. He gets rid of his lone noble hierarchs, and now any of those attacks that he's making with Inkmoth Nexus, they're not going to be for as much damage. Exalted's not going to be happening. Also, his mana is going to be a little bit more constrained.
I have you at 13. 13. And I'm at 14.
So players just confirming agreement on life totals here. Great thing to do in tournament Magic.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's interesting that sort of, even though Jon Finkel not naturally going for damage most of the time, he does get to see Willy Edel on comparatively low life, because those Thoughtseizes, those fetch lands, they do add up.
Yeah, and it's not unheard of to see an Infect deck occasionally win through normal damage. Things like multiple Noble Hierarchs, or, I don't know, maybe a Dryad Arbor or something.
It sounds like Seth Manfield picking up his first game against Jelga Vigejma. Both of these players have had a fair amount of time in the King of the Hill seat, but Seth Manfield really not wanting to leave anything to chance, to pick up the wins where he can early so that he can potentially have some fairly relaxed rounds later on.
And back in our feature match, Jon Finkel, another Gitaxian Probe, takes a peek at Willy Edel's hand.
Yeah, I think that Gitaxian Probe, a really interesting card, is one of those ones where the fact that it draws you a card is great, but the information, when you're talking about players at this level in the game, I mean, Jon Finkel, a slam dunk first pick Hall of Famer, Willy Edel, also fantastic, fantastic player, that when you give a great player this much information, it's just devastating.
Especially with a deck like Infect, where the entire game can hinge on making that crucial decision to go all in on a pump spell or take a risk like that. If you have information about your opponent's hand, you can make those choices correctly 100% of the time.
So here's Tasigur the Golden Fang. Comparatively few Fate Reforged cards that we've seen making a big impact, but this one, certainly a power player in the Abzan decks here. Able to come down kind of a bit like a Tarmogoyf, I guess, a very cheap, sizable threat, but the ability also a pretty powerful one when there's just that one path to exile left in the graveyard.
And we see Willy Edel sculpting the game toward the direction he wants it to go here. He knows Jon Finkel's low on gas. He dealt with that Blighted Agent, which was the threat that was hard to block, and now he's got Tasigur and a Treetop Village. So he might be looking to pressure Jon and try to end the game quickly before Jon can draw into more pump spells.
Yeah, I mean, between the Treetop Village and Tasigur, he's got a 2-turn clock, right?
Yeah, it looks like it. I mean, Jon, of course, can chump block, but once he gets into that situation, it's a losing proposition for him.
Yeah, I mean, the early discard plus a slightly mana-heavy draw for Jon Finkel has not really worked out too well for him, but double Distortion Strike means that if he can start to string together attacks, there's really not going to be anything Willy Edel can do to stop them in terms of blocking. And
Willy, just with 2 lands in hand and a Maelstrom Pulse, which is a sorcery speed removal spell, not going to do the trick very well against Infect when Jon's threats are deadliest during his own turn.
Yeah, that Inkmoth Nexus, completely safe from sorcery speed removal, and it looks like it's going to get a chance to swing in here.
So Willy at 2 poison counters before this attack. Jon willing to just get in for 1 point, continue chipping away, patiently waiting for that big turn.
And Spellskite coming down for Jon Finkel here. Now, that's an interesting one in the main deck. Is it mainly here just to say, I'm going to protect my own Infect creatures?
Yeah, absolutely. It has some other fringe uses, like against Splinter Twin, for example. It can sort of magnet a Splinter Twin enchantment onto itself. just generally an all-purpose utility card, but it's especially there for protecting the creatures when you want to move in on some pump spells.
And it's entirely possible, of course, that it might end up blocking too. Maelstrom, sorry, an Abrupt Decay there coming from Willy Edel. And that's enough to prompt Apostle's Blessing from Jon Finkel to give it appropriate protection. I guess protection from black means it can also quite happily block Tasica here, right?
Yep. Willy goes ahead and just fires off that Abrupt Decay. It can't hit the Inkmoth Nexus anyway because it can't hit lands, and the Inkmoth Nexus remains a land while it's a creature, and he's got the Spellskite anyway, so he needs to deal with that Spellskite before he can break through and start attacking Jon's other potential creatures.
And there's Treetop Village and Tasica coming in. The Spellskite this turn able to block Tasica without dying thanks to that protection from black. Finkel takes 3, dropping to 8. Willy Edel, 11 life, so not that much difference in life totals. Also 3 poison.
Yeah, I wonder if that was a potential error on Willy's part, casting the Abrupt Decay before attacking. Hard to say for sure. He may have just been more interested in getting the correct information. But Jon's turn here, he moves in on Distortion Strike and has become immense off the top.
Yeah, become immense. We saw it doing great work for Mueller just a round before attacking in, but finishing that game in very decisive fashion. We're going to get a chance to look at a few of the other tables very shortly, but before that, we just got a few messages for you.
Outfit your Magic collection with the newest Fate Reforged accessories from Ultra Pro. You can see the full array of card sleeves, deck boxes, playmats, and portfolios of your favorite Magic artwork at ultrapro.com. Friday Night Magic has expanded to include all formats. Get ready for Commander, Legacy, or even Conspiracy drafts. Check out your local store for details and share your FNM stories by using the hashtag MTGFNM on Twitter. Visit magic.wizards.com/FNM for more information.
Hello and welcome back to round 12 of Pro Tour Fate Reforged. We're going to have a little look in on one of our other games that's going on here just while Jon Finkel and Willy Edel shuffle up for their game too. We've got Robin Dolar on the left of our screen. He's playing Abzan. We kind of know how that one works. On the other side of things, though, Sam Black, he's playing the Amulet Bloom deck that is very, very intricate, really quite complicated, but super duper powerful. Yeah,
really interesting deck, capable of incredibly explosive draws. Primeval Titan being the key card you want to use Amulet of Vigor to ramp into here. It looks like Sam did have one, but it's just been pathed to exile by Robin Dolar.
Yeah, plenty of lands to fetch for Sam Black, even with that path to exile. But the main thing that this deck is trying to do is get lots of lands in play and get a big combo, either with Hive Mind or potentially just attacking for an awful lot. It looks like neither of those plans worked out too well for Sam Black in that game. Robin Dolar picks up his first game win, so we're going to get a chance to look at one of our other games that's in progress. We're going to get a chance to see Seth Manfield, who's up a game against Yelga Vigashma, his burn deck doing the work for him there against Red-Blue Twin. Just an update from one of the other tables, Yuki Ichikawa with Jund. He's up a game against the burn deck of Jason Chun, so it's not as if burn wins it every single time. Probably best for all of us, right?
Absolutely. So Seth in a great position here, undefeated after 11 rounds, 5 more to go. Really just needs to win 1 or 2 of the next 5 modern rounds. And he's playing a burn deck, so I think he's in a pretty good spot here.
Yeah, life total's pretty even at this point. The game's kind of just started. I mean, Yelga Vigashma, he's got to be very careful about protecting his life, but I know that out of the sideboard, he does have an awful lot of ways of gaining life. He's got Bat Skulls, he's got Wormcoil Engines, he just needs the time to be able to deploy them, because if with a little bit of time, his control deck can definitely compete against burn.
Yeah, I mean, step 1 for Yelger is just to kind of survive until maybe turn 4, turn 5, when he can start establishing control of the game. And as you mentioned, Tim, try to get some life gain online. Something like a Batter Skull post-sideboard is really what he's looking to assemble.
Yeah, it's Vigashma there, dropping to 13 off a Lava Spike. It's kind of worth almost thinking about your life total in 3-point increments against burn. An awful lot of their spells do just do 3 points of damage, and Deceiver Exarch there potentially threatening a very, very quick kill for Yelga Vigashma if he can find a Splinter Twin. But in the meantime, just tapping down a land can be pretty good, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, name of the game is just to survive here. He wants to slow Seth down, buy some more time, hit some more land drops. Of course, if he does happen to have a lucky combo draw, he can just go turn 3 Deceiver Exarch, turn 4 Splinter Twin.
In response to that Deceiver Exarch, though, there was the Boros Charm to drop Yelga Vigashma to 9. Single digits, not exactly where you want to be, because that could just be 3 spells and he's dead, right?
Absolutely. It's worth mentioning, though, Yelger does have a pretty good defense set up against creatures. Deceiver Exarch, being a 1/4 creature, can block most of the creatures out of a burn deck, also with an Electrolyze in hand. So it's unlikely that things like Goblin Guide or Monastery Swift Spear are going to pose much of a threat at this stage of the game.
Yeah, I mean, one of the tricky things for Yelga here, I mean, we can see he's got an Electrolyze in hand, which might also be good against creatures, probably the reason he attacked there. He doesn't have the second red mana for his big combo finish. But, I mean, Seth having drawn 4 lands, that's probably about 1 more than he really wants, I would say.
Yeah. Once you hit, say, 3 lands in the burn deck, any additional land you draw is almost just a dead card.
Though he might well find that he appreciates having it here if there's a remand from Yelga. As it is, though, with 4 lands, he's able to Snapcast a Mage, get a second go with that mana leak there, countering the Eidolon of the Great Revel. And the Eidolon potentially was going to be a little bit of a problem. Yeah,
one of the cards you absolutely do not want to let resolve out of the burn deck. We saw that card have an impact in Standard, but in Modern, it's just incredibly powerful. So many of the cards in Modern cost 3 mana or less.
So Seth Manfield here, a little bit to think about. So much of what his deck can do can be done at instant speed, but right now Yelga's tapped out, so there's definitely a temptation to just say, let's get some more damage through, let's try and get you to a point where any one spell's going to kill you, and at that point, I'm in great shape.
Mm-hmm. Again, it can lead you into situations where you're really pressuring your opponent's mana. If you get them low enough that you threaten to kill them at any time, then they have to leave up counterspell mana for the rest of the game. It becomes hard to develop.
Now, it's interesting he fetched a Wooded Foothills there. There's not so many green spells in Manfield's deck, but one that's very important in this matchup potentially is Destructive Revelry. A way of dealing with the combo, still dealing damage, basically making sure that he's able to remain competitive without diluting the overall plan of what his deck does.
Yeah, I can deal with things like Batterskull and Spellskite for sure, pro sideboard.
So Manfield here desperately trying to finish things up. I know that we're going to be able to get a chance to go back to our main game soon enough, but the way that these burn decks work, it can be so quick that I think we're probably going to try and just catch the last remnants of this game, assuming that Yelga can't somehow pull himself back into this. He's digging with that Electrolyze there primarily.
Seth fires off the Lava Spike in his main phase, knocking Yelger down to a precarious 3 life. Yelger, out of desperation, almost cycles his Electrolyze at the end of the turn, knowing he either has to end the game or find a way to prevent Seth from top-decking a burn spell and finishing him off.
He drew the mountain, but the fact he's attacking here, not a good sign for Yelga's Vigashma.
Right, his ideal main phase there, of course, playing a Splinter Twin and ending the game right away, but not so lucky.
I mean, I guess it's kind of tricky in some circumstances just to pull off the combo against burn, because they do have a lot of ways of killing your creature in response to that that Splinter Twin. Now, Deceiver Exarch far better than Pestamite in this spot.
Absolutely. Often takes 2 burn spells to take out. And of course, with Yelger being at 3 life, we know that any burn spells Seth does top deck will be aimed at Yelger's face.
Drew a Dispel there off Remand. That one, a nice one for him to find there, because it will stop a large proportion of burn spells. Won't necessarily stop the Eidolon of the Great Revel if it gets recast, though. So Yelga somehow still in this game, finds a land. That's not exactly what he was hoping for. Gets in for another cheeky little point here.
Seth getting precariously low on life, though, as well. And Yelger with a Lightning Bolt in hand. It's not far-fetched to potentially see Yelger finishing off this game with just regular attacking and damage.
And there's a Lava Spike. That one can't get stopped by Dispel, so that's enough to get a handshake from Yelga Vigashma. Seth Manfield does it again, still undefeated. I think that we need to pretty much warm up a chair for him in the top 8, because there's really no stopping this boy.
Yeah, he's looking really good at this point.
So we're going to head back to our main match now between Jon Finkel and Willy Edel. Edel was able to pick up the first one. Finkel was able to pick up the first one with a big Become Immense off the top to close things out. But a turn 1 duress means that Willy Edel is going to be able to figure out exactly what he's up against. We see that there is the Blighted Agent, there are some pump spells, there are some Noble Hierarchs, but he can't take that Blighted Agent. Just 2 options for him to take here, Might of Old Crowser and Vines of Vastwood.
Yeah, Jon probably not too upset to get duressed here. He does have spells in his hand that can be chosen, but his early turns, his plan is just to develop Noble Hierarch and Blighted Agent and just start, again, just chipping away 2 points, 3 points here and there.
Yeah, and Might of Old Crows and Vines of Vastwood. I have to think that the Vines of Vastwood probably better here because it serves a double role of protection as well. But neither of them are exactly in short supply in his deck.
Yeah, I mean, depending on Willy's hand, he's probably most likely to take the Vines, and he does, of course, because that means Jon's going to be vulnerable to removal spells.
We have another update from one of the back tables. Jason Chung able to win a game with Burn against Yuki Ichikawa, so that one going to a game 3 as we see Jon Finkel here with the Noble Hierarch right on time as planned. But Engineered Explosives for Willy Edel. This could be an interesting game.
Yeah, so Edel has seen that Jon has 2 Noble Hierarchs in his hand. Both are 1-drops. We may see him sort of slow roll the Engineered Explosives and try to hit both those Hierarchs at once. Or if he's feeling threatened by the Blighted Agent, he might just take out Jon's only source of Infect for the time being to buy himself some more time.
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few lines available to Edel here now that he knows what's going on. He's got Liliana of the Veil to potentially say, that's going to deal with the 2-drop. Meanwhile, I've got a way of dealing with your 1-drops. And then Tectonic Edge means that even if there's an Inkmoth Nexus coming from Jon Finkel, it may very well be that Edel just has the right set of answers.
And very interesting here, Jon declines to play the 2nd Noble Hierarch. And we see that the real answer is because he's drawn a 2nd Vines of Vastwood, so he wants to leave up that protection. It would also be reasonable either not to play it to play around something like Engineered Explosives or Damnation, something along those lines, or just simply to bluff that he has another protection spell like an Apostle's Blessing or a Vines of Vastwood.
I mean, this will be one of the matchups that Jon Finkel has tested a large amount. I'm sure he's very well aware of all of the different sideboard options that could have come in. Engineered Explosives, likely sort of potentially a 1 or 2 of in Willy Edel's deck.
Yeah,
not sort of ubiquitous.
If I were Jon, it's not a card that would be, loud on my radar, so to speak. But it's something you've always got to consider. There are sweepers like Drown in Sorrow or Damnation are possibilities.
And Finkel there discarding a Blighted Agent. Now, what does that say to Willy Edel in terms of how he feels that his hand's set up?
It certainly says Jon has no more lands in hand. With 3 mana sources on the battlefield already, he doesn't really need any more. So I think Willy Edel can conclude that Jon Finkel has drawn more spells, actually more pump spells specifically. He knows about the Noble Hierarch and the Might of Old Crosa, so there's still one unknown card in Jon's hand from Willy Edel's perspective.
A scary prospect, as it always is playing against Infect, because, I mean, the real sort of power of this deck is the fact that it can just get there from absolutely nowhere.
Yeah, and Jon Finkel, definitely a master of the hidden information aspects of Magic. Definitely want to play the psychological games, to be capable of bluffing, to be very capable of predicting what his opponent might have in hand. So certainly a dangerous opponent when you don't have full information about what he's up to.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the double whammy of he really doesn't give a whole lot away, and he takes in everything.
Mm-hmm.
Attack you, that's 6.
So Might of Old Crosa giving +4/+4, Noble Hierarch giving Exalted, and Vines of Vastwood pumping a little bit more. And Willy Edel there saying, well, I had this Engineered Explosives, but I just never had time to get it all going.
Yeah, just amazing there. Really showcasing the strength of that Infect deck. I mean, Willy played turn 1 Duress and tapped out on turn 3 and lost the game on the draw. So, yeah,
yeah,
pretty incredible there.
Finkel known for hugely explosive decks that are difficult to interact with, and they're showing that just because it's not a Storm deck doesn't mean that Jon Finkel is not able to end the game on turn 3.
Yeah, we'll see. Jon Finkel's willing to attack with creatures when, he can still win the game on turn 3 with the flurry of spells.
And here we get a chance to see a little bit more of Sam Black against Robin Dolar, Black on the right there. And he's got Amulet of Vigor in play. Now that completely changes the way that the deck on the right-hand side of the table is going to be playing. Let's have a little bit of a chat through exactly what we can expect to see here. So he's resolved a Summer Bloom. He can play multiple lands a turn. He can play up to 3 additional lands this turn. And he has not yet played a land at all, so an awful lot of options available to him here.
So for those of you at home that are unfamiliar with Amulet of Vigor combo, Amulet of Vigor is an artifact that says whenever a permanent enters this battlefield tapped under your control, you can untap it. Now, this deck that Sam Black is playing uses this with the Ravnica bounce lands that enter the battlefield tapped and tapped for 2 mana to generate an explosive amount of mana with cards like Summer Bloom and then eventually Primeval Titan. And that's exactly what we see here.
Yeah, he plays one of his bounce lands 3 times. Before it bounces, taps it for mana, makes 6 mana, immediately gets Primeval Titan. And you know what? The lands that come into play from that, normally they come into play tapped. Now they come into play untapped, or come into play and then are allowed to untap, sorry. And suddenly, that's a Slayer's Stronghold getting activated to give haste to his Primeval Titan. So it's going to get to attack and get even more lands into play.
Yeah, just an amazingly explosive turn out of this Amulet deck. And this is a deck that's, you know, it's been around for a while, but it's a relatively fringe deck in Modern. You know, oftentimes players don't really know what to expect out of a deck like this. Now, of course, we are at the Pro Tour. I'm sure the vast majority of the players in this field know what's up when they see Sam Black starting to play some Ravnica bounce lands. But nonetheless, it can be easy to underestimate just how explosive this deck can be.
Yeah, I think underestimate is exactly the right word, because there's a few things going on with it. Firstly, while it can be very explosive, it can play a slightly longer game as well. I think that sometimes people see it as being a glass cannon that it isn't really. It can play longer games. It's got powerful cards. The other thing is it can seem very high variance. But between Summoner's Pact and Teleria West, it does have a large amount of ability to find the cards it needs at the right moment. On top of course, Primeval Titan being able to attack for and then fetch exactly the lands that you need. So Sam Black here, it looks like he's going for a Simic Growth Chamber, so that's another bounce land, and Teleria West might be a reasonable option here, but actually he's gone for Vesuva, which is going to get to copy one of his lands in play.
Trigger untapping these things, and I'll return these two lands to my hand.
So a casual set of attacks here from Sam Black that leaves him with way more lands in play, a gigantic Primeval Titan that's coming through. Yeah, tough spot for Robin Dolar here.
Take 3 trample. You go to 13.
So yeah, double strike on the Primeval Titan, a common trick here, but post-combat, a second Primeval Titan.
Wow, this is big news. So Sam Black just getting tons of value by getting these lands out of his deck. Not only is he increasing, you know, his mana advantage here, but utility lands like Slayer's Stronghold can really give him a big advantage here.
And look at Robin Dolar there. He doesn't know what's going on. Like, what turn is this? He's thinking. Normally, you can kind of count the number of lands in play and say, oh, it's probably about turn 4, turn 5. Against this deck, that really means nothing.
So Sam threatening to potentially just win the game by attacking with these 6/6 Primeval Titans. Of course, we know this Amulet deck also capable of winning with Hive Mind combos.
Yeah, the Hive Mind combos end up being pretty complicated, but the gist of it is you've got your enchantment there that means that whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery, each other player copies it. If you play a pact, something that you have to pay a very specific upkeep on or lose the game, your opponent gets a copy. They are the one that has to pay for it first, and basically they find that they can't pay it and they lose the game. But by the sounds of it, we are going to have just this one last match as Yuki Ichikawa up against Jason Chung. That one has just completed. So we're going to get a chance to stay and watch a full game here for the decider between Sam Black and Robin Dolar. Jason Chung is going to go and chill out as his Burn deck was able to do the do. Burn doing very well in the feature match area and in general this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely one of the top stories of the weekend. But personally, I'm really excited to see this game from the start here. I find this Amulet of Vigor combo deck really, really interesting to watch, and it's just going to be a blast to see how it plays out from the mulligans through turn 1 of the game and beyond.
We can see there are a few tweets that have come through just as people are watching the coverage. Do tweet us at Magic Pro Tour to let us know what you're up to, what you've been enjoying, what decks you maybe want to see. A number of people liking the Infect deck from Jon Finkel, but also quite a few people liking Burn. And one of those people, I would guess, is Eric Klug, who's put together a very unusual cube featuring just cards that have won Pro Tours. Every constructed deck that's ever won a Pro Tour, any cards in those decks, one of them makes it into the cube. And if Burn wins this Pro Tour, he's going to get a lot of interesting cards in there.
Oh yeah, that should be a pretty good update for the cube.
Robin Dolar here having a bit of a think about what he wants to do against this relatively fringe deck. It's not necessarily one that is super easy to sideboard against.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing he's going to be looking for in his opening hand is a hand disruption spell like Thoughtseize or Inquisition of Kozilek. This Amulet deck, it's capable of very explosive draws, but it relies on very specific cards, and those are exactly the kind of matchups where a card like Thoughtseize really shines.
Yeah, so Sam Black here, ideally, every single game he wants to start out with a turn 1 Amulet of Vigor, right? But on the draw, he knows that if there's that turn 1 discard spell, it's going to be able to hit that his 1-cost artifact.
Yeah, which is why we may see him wanting to start off with a turn 0 Leyline of Sanctity, perhaps.
Leyline of Sanctity is an interesting one. It's one that I think I would have expected to see a little bit more of, given that this is the Pro Tour where I think a lot of us expected there to be quite a bit of discard. And especially for the decks that need very specific cards not to get stripped out of their hand, Leyline is great. It's also fantastic against an awful lot of combo decks.
Yeah, we saw Stanislav Sivka use Leyline of Sanctity to great effect to win the Pro Tour, what was it, 2 years ago with his Eggs deck?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, if all you want to do is do your thing and then kill people, then Leyline of Sanctity buys you an awful lot of time to do your thing.
Yep. Shields up.
Sam Black here, having a little look. I'm not sure if this is his opening hand so much as him just making final decisions around his sideboarding plan. I mean, I guess one of the cool things about playing a more fringe deck is that you get the opportunity to feel much more prepared than your opponents, because you can have tested a lot of the big matches and have a really great plan for all of them, and you know that some of your opponents might not necessarily have done the same for you.
Yeah, that's exactly the case.
Interesting that Sam Black is on this Amulet Bloom deck that I don't think we've seen really anyone else in the feature match area playing.
Yeah, so we know Sam was a part of what's become known as Teamwork, I believe. Is that correct?
I love a bit of teamwork, and yes, he was on that team.
It's unclear to me. I'm not sure how many, if any, of the other players on that team are playing this this Samulet deck. I should say this Amulet deck that Sam has piloted here today. So we'll see. We'll hopefully find that out.
Yeah, Samulet Bloom is officially the name now, but it's a very intricate deck, one that I think suits very well the way that Sam Black plays Magic the Gathering. Maybe not one that, certainly not one that I would want to pick up on a whim and just see if I can win with.
Yeah, Sam, a player who's just always looking for these kooky, sort of fringe, out there card combinations and decks.
And you called it. There's the turn 0 Leyline of Sanctity.
Yeah.
No discard. Robin Dolar just saying, well, I might as well play this Treetop Village because any discard spells in his hand do absolutely nothing right now. Robin Dolar has the Thoughtseize in hand. That's not going to help him too well. And Sam Black plays a turn 1 Teleria West. For now, it's a mana producer. At some point, he could very easily play a bounce land, though, get that back, and then use the transmutability on it to find a Summoner's Pact, to find a variety of different lands. He can pay 1 and blue to search his deck for any card with a converted mana cost of 0, reveal it, put his hand.
Yep. Yeah, very important to find pacts if he is going for a Hive Mind combo kill.
I mean, the other thing that you can sometimes do, some builds of this run Engineered Explosives in the sideboard, and it's another card that its converted mana cost is 0 when it's not on the stack, so you're able to fetch that one up as well. You get a large amount of flexibility from this search spell, Teleria West. And of course, it's not actually a spell, so you can't counter it.
That's right.
Tarmogoyf here from Robin Dolar, currently a 1-2, just that Verdant Catacombs in the graveyard. The sorcery here that's coming through, Serum Visions, does make the Tarmogoyf a little bigger, but I'm guessing that Sam not too worried about that just now because he does need to find the exact right pieces for his Amulet Bloom deck that's looking to go off here.
So taking a quick look at Sam Black's hand here, we do see a Wormcoil engine has come in. A creature that's just very difficult for the Abzan deck to deal with. Often they have to spend multiple removal spells.
And kind of a cool play that I guess that Robin Dolar could do here, if he absolutely just wants to pump Tarmogoyf, he could Thoughtseize himself, discard whatever he fancies, and get a few extra points through. Seems relatively niche. Nice to know about, though, just in case you just need that final point. Sometimes you've got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, the Thoughtseize is largely going to be dead in his hand unless he can find something like a Maelstrom Pulse to remove that Leyline of Sanctity. He's not really going to be able to do much with it anyway. Of course, Sam Black did put a sorcery in the graveyard already with Serum Vision. So Dolar just trying to put on a clock here, attacking with Treetop Village and the Tarmogoyf, not really developing much more of his board.
And it looks like Sam Black might have gone for kind of a creature strategy after boarding. He's just got drawn a Sagada, Host of Herons. Now, this is a very cool card, very powerful against the likes of Liliana. It means that none of his creatures can get sacrificed. And on top of that, it's a 5/5 flying hexproof. It basically says, I'm sorry, Abzan, there's really very little you can do about me, and I can win the game in 4 swings.
Yeah, and this is a great example. You mentioned earlier, Tim, how when you're playing with sort of a fringe deck like this, or a deck of your own design, you just have such an advantage where you know what your game plan is against each of these classic archetypes that you expect to face, but your opponents, they really don't know what you might do post-sideboard. And if Sam did indeed bring in a bunch of creatures like Wormcoil Engine, like Sigarda, I mean, we may have seen Robin Dolar bring out some of his removal spells, which is just going to leave him vulnerable to that type of a strategy.
And Calming Garden here getting bounced and replayed, making more plant tokens for Sam Black. Those really effective speed bumps when Tarmogoyf, no trample there. If a Siege Rhino comes down, it's not really too worried about the plants. It likes dancing around in gardens just fine. But that Tarmogoyf is going to get stuck in some vines for a little while.
And just a disaster here for Dolar, drawing a second Thoughtseize, just a dead card at this point against that Leyline of Sanctity. He does have a Tectonic Edge in his hand, which he can use to interact, even knocking Sam down by 2 mana if he takes out one of those Ravnica lands. However, Sam did play Summer Bloom on his previous turn, developing his mana quite a bit. Does not currently have any Ravnica Karus in play to be vulnerable to Tectonic Edge.
Yeah, and Sam Black now saying, yep, that Tarmogoyf is big enough that I'm willing to start blocking with my plant tokens. He's losing a land to Tectonic Edge. In this case, it's the Vesuva. But ultimately, he's not really presenting the kind of clock that Sam has too much cause to be worried about. And Black able to just advance his game plan, slowly but surely reaching the point where Sigarda, Wormcoil Engine, they're going to be able to get in. And once they start swinging, it's really not going to take too many turns for Robin Dolar to be in an awful lot of trouble.
So Sam at a healthy 15 life points right here. A couple of chump blockers in the form of plant tokens from Colony Garden. Really just has a nice defense to give him the comfort to get up to the 5 and 6 mana range where he can start deploying these big creatures, which we know that at the moment Robin Dolar has no answer to.
And one interesting thing here is that there's a couple of Summoners Pact in Black's hand. If I were him, especially now that I've seen Tectonic Edge is in Robin Dolar's range, I'd be very tempted to say, I'm not going to worry about them for now. They can just chill out. I don't want to lose the game to not being able to pay for a Pact.
Yeah, absolutely correct to be cautious in this case. I mean, Sam Black in a comfortable position, doesn't need to take any risks. Sigarda comes out here, makes it unprofitable to attack with the Tarmogoyf or the Treetop Village. Puts the brakes on Robin Dolar's offense. And oh my goodness, a third Thoughtseize drawn. This Leyline of Sanctity has just done so much work this game. Incredible.
The one thing that I'm really learning here is Robin Dolar has a great poker face. He's holding a hand that does... The best that he can do is 6 himself. I guess for himself and discard the other 2 cards. But yeah, he's sat here with worse than nothing in his hand. And he looks like he's still playing a game of Magic.
Yeah, and that's just an absolutely key thing at this level of competition. I mean, you can't let your opponent know when you're defenseless. They're just going to take advantage of it right away.
And Sam Black here, he knows that he doesn't need to be too far off to the races. Abzan, not necessarily known for being a super explosive deck. It's not like the Infect deck that we saw from Jon Finkel. It is a deck where you can kind of relatively easily plan for how much damage you might take in each turn. So he's saying, I'm going to gradually build my board, gradually attack you with Sigarda, and if everything carries on the way that it currently is, I'm going to win the game. So he's got enough land here that he's confident in being able to pay for Summoner's Pact, uses that Pact, it doesn't cost him any mana this turn, and gets to find a Primeval Titan. Now, if you want to make sure you can pay for your pacts, finding a creature that fetches you more land seems like a really great way of doing it. Primeval Titan getting cast immediately here, and Sam Black looking through, figuring out what lands to get. Now, that's a bit of a puzzle itself in many cases, because in point of fact, this is a deck that runs an awful lot of singleton lands.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I won't get into details here, but I'm looking at the deck list now, and it's just 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, all the way down the lands column there. So, yeah, it's for sure a very difficult deck to pilot skillfully. A lot of choices every single turn.
And of course, if you want to find out more details about this match, in addition to what you're seeing here, it is being covered by our text coverage team. Adam Staborski there in the back is typing up all the details of this match. You'll be able to find out exactly how Game 1 and Game 2 went, in addition to, of course, staying with us for the next, probably not very long, which will be the remainder of our Game 3.
So let's take a look at what Delar might be able to draw to get him out of this situation. Certainly a removal spell for the Primeval Titan is a start. Sigarda, of course, having hexproof, very difficult to get off the table. Normally, a card like Liliana of the Veil is effective against hexproof creatures. However, Sigarda says your creatures can't be sacrificed. Moreover, there's a Leyline of Sanctity in play, which means Sam Black can't be targeted and asked to sacrifice a creature. And even beyond that, he has a plant token from Kalni Garden. So Liliana just trumped on many levels here.
Yeah, the fix very much in. And actually, it feels to me like even though Liliana at the start of the weekend seemed to be a great choice, quite a few players playing cards that punish it. We've seen some Lockstone Smiters. We've seen all sorts of situations where Liliana perhaps hasn't been as powerful as people might have initially thought.
Yeah, it's definitely a card with a target on its head this weekend.
But congratulations to Sam Black there. He now advances to 9-3. So he needs to have a great run here through Constructed, but Constructed really what Sam Black is known for. He's absolutely one of the power players when it comes to Constructed, and I know a big pickup for teamwork.
Absolutely.
Who've been sort of putting together their planning for this Pro Tour and seem to be doing pretty well with it. But yeah, very, very happy to see Amulet Bloom in the area because it's a super fun deck to watch.
Yeah, it's just a blast.
And of course, the other matches that we saw there, Jon Finkel continuing his run with Infect. Game 1 looked a little scary. The other game, though, super powerful draws from him,
just really highlighted how powerful that Infect deck can be. And Team Channel Fireball Pantheon selected that deck specifically to defeat Abzan, and we saw that play out there.
And then, of course, Burn. We really can't forget about it, both on the side for Justin Chung and for Seth Manfield, who just does not seem to want to ever lose.
Yeah, he's been relentless this weekend.
I mean, it's the sort of thing that if you want to ask him, do you see Constructed as being your main forte? Do you see Limited? He's got it all at this weekend.
Yep, really showing his mastery
of course,
of both formats.
Has the modern GP, has the limited GPs under his belt. He's absolutely someone to watch out for, and we will be seeing plenty more from him today and almost certainly on Sunday as well.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
And now, I guess that the big question is, what other decks are we hoping to see a little bit more of? I've heard rumors that there was Merfolk doing well at the end of yesterday.
Yeah, Merfolk, absolutely one of the decks I want to take a look at. I saw some of that at the top tables yesterday. I believe one or more Italian players were playing that deck. Looked really cool. I saw all sorts of interesting things, I guess, throughout the weekend.
Merfolk was one of the decks that I kind of felt like it was just slightly marginalized out in the format before the bannings. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Birthing Pod being a card in particular that's particularly oppressive against other creature decks, just because you can sort of grind people out with value, even if you're not comboing them out. Just an endless supply of Kitchen Finks, Restoration Angels, and so forth and so on. You can just grind out these creature decks so easily.
Yeah, and I know that I've been talking to various people in R&D. There's been a lot of thought around the bannings, and it seems like the format right now has been absolutely great. But it sounds like the players down the feature match area, they've tidied things up, and we'll get a chance to speak to Marshall and the winner of that match, Sam Black.
Hey guys, welcome down to the feature match area. Marshall Sutcliffe here, and I'm with Sam Black, who just won his match with Amulet Bloom. Sam, talk to us a little bit about how the testing went and how you came to this deck.
Well, I tested with a new group. It was a bunch of local friends of mine from Madison and some assorted people with jobs who didn't want to get together in person before the event. And so I spent all of my time just in my house playing games with my housemate Justin Cohen. And then talking on a forum with the other guys online. And Justin has been championing Amulet since before Worlds. He was telling me that he liked it. He played it at the Grand Prix, did pretty well. And basically the testing process was just me running decks into Amulet and getting beaten.
Now, how difficult is the deck to play? When we came onto your match, you had just resolved Summer Bloom, and you had 4 land drops to make, and I was looking at your hand like, I don't know what to do next. How difficult is it to pilot?
Yeah, so Justin, the way that he says it is it's not difficult, but it's tricky. There's not a lot of interaction with your opponent. It's all just a puzzle. So you just have to there are some shortcuts. You learn every land play. If I have an amulet and a bounce land is 2 mana. Every land play if I have 2 amulets and a bounce land is 4 mana. And you just work out shortcuts to do the math on figuring out everything you can do. And then you need to learn a whole bunch of different lines of stuff you can get with your Titans and when to do it. But once you've figured out, once you know all the basic patterns, and if you're capable of just solving some puzzles, it's a very different skill than other games of Magic, which is what drew Justin to it, because this is his first time on the Pro Tour, and he wanted to just play a deck he was familiar with and not have to play traditional Magic against traditional mages. Whereas for me, that was a bit of a deterrent, because like I'm much better at Magic than I am at puzzles. But I played with the deck enough that I've figured out most of the puzzles.
You're sitting at at X and 3 now, is that correct?
I am, that's correct.
All right, good luck in the rest. You've got a little run to go here, but you're still live for top 8.
Yep, thank you very much.
All right, let's send it back to the news desk and Richard Hagan.
Thank you very much, Marshall. Rich and Randy here, both glued to our iPads with all the results coming through. Randy, what stands out to you coming in?
Efro got to 10-2, beat Austin Bursovic. It's a big match at the top of the Swiss. Jacob Wilson got to 10-2, took down Jesse Hampton. I mean, Seth Manfield's obviously ridiculous at 12-0. He's essentially clinched at this point. You know, might need to pick up a point at some time, but it's getting very, very interesting. Reed Duke did pick up his 4th loss.
Right.
So probably knocks him out of top 8 contention. But still lots of interesting stories going on.
All right, we'll keep track of those for you and bring you the standings in just a little bit. But we have a deck tech lined up for you. It's one of the pillars of the format. It's Abzan. And here to tell you all about it is Brian David Marshall in the company of Jacob Wilson.